You wouldn't think it was a dangerous job, delivering the mail. They have to try to land an airliner in a way no pilot has ever done before.
We've lost all hydraulics.
All the controls are dead. They've become passengers in their own plane, and somehow they have to land it.
Off runway.
Even at journey's end, the ordeal isn't over.
Do not move!
3,000. We're not getting any oxygen. We have the terrain alarm. Unit tower, Aero Peru 603. We are in an emergency.
Baghdad, November 22nd, 2003. Officially, the war in Iraq has been over for months, but the country is violent and unstable. No one feels safe. A civilian cargo plane has just taken off from the city's airport.
What's that?
Within seconds, the crew lose control, unable to figure out what has happened to their aircraft.
We've lost all hydraulics.
They struggle to master 100 tons of wide-bodied jet. Their plane is on fire. Unless they can land soon, the wing will burn up. They'll crash and die.
Steady.
They're carrying too much speed.
They're going so fast, they may not make the runway. No one has ever successfully done this before. By November 2003, the American-led coalition has been in charge of Iraq for 6 months. The Iraqi army is defeated. Saddam Hussein, the deposed president, remains in hiding. Ominously, the main threat is now from secret armed groups. They're targeting civilians, both Iraqi and foreign, in order to make the country unstable, perhaps even provoke a civil war. They have plundered Iraqi army stores for every infantry weapon there is, even surface-to-air missiles. Baghdad is a very dangerous place. Dawn, on the outskirts of the city. Claudine Vernier-Pallier from the French weekly magazine Paris Match, with her photographer Jérôme, is going to a secret meeting with Iraqi terrorists. She's after the story that everyone wants. Who are they? What do they want? The previous day, she had met the leader in a hotel room. He called himself Abu Abdallah, but no one knew his real name.
Evidently, this man was very, very determined to stop at nothing, to show the Americans that he wanted no more of them, at least not their military tactics.
Baghdad Airport, key to the US presence in Iraq. Military planes fly in daily to supply the troops and to help rebuild the shattered country. Because of the threat from Iraqi terrorists, the US has established a security zone around the airport, patrolled by Apache helicopters. On the tarmac today is one of the few civilian aircraft to use the airport, an Airbus A300, belonging to the courier firm DHL. They have won the contract to carry the soldiers' mail.
They led us down little roads for a long time to be sure we would lose our bearings.
At the hotel meeting, Claudine and her photographer had arranged to meet the rebels at dawn the next morning to take pictures of the fighters with their weapons.
We arrived in a field where we met other vehicles, among them a pickup truck. The men got out of the cars. And just off the road, hidden under some branches, the men recovered some weapons and some missiles. They loaded their weapons in their vehicles, and Jérôme took the pictures we wanted.
The journalists have got the story they came for, but Abu Abdallah is not finished with them yet. He tells them to follow. They don't know where.
And he told me that a new phase in his resistance actions would be to shoot missiles at planes.
A few kilometers away, the DHL plane is getting ready to depart. 2 flights a day shuttle post and packages in and out of the war zone.
Baghdad Tower, Oscar Delta Lima Lima, Airbus A300 cargo, Apron and Information Sierra, Costada.
The Australian Air Force is providing the air traffic control in Baghdad.
Oscar Delta Lima Lima, clear to start.
Before start checklist. Start 2.
Captain Eric Janot is Belgian, 38 years old and single. He realized his dearest ambition a year ago when he qualified to captain the Airbus A300.
M245.
Valve closed, EGT 610.
Flight engineer Mario Rafael lives in Scotland with his wife and children. At 54, he's the oldest and most experienced member of the crew, a veteran of many danger zones.
Start 1. Valve open.
The 29-year-old co-pilot, Steve Michielsen, is also Belgian. He's been married just 3 months. Cargo airlines are great places for young pilots to get the hours and experience they need to pilot commercial aircraft.
016 Kruger.
DHL has been flying into Baghdad for 6 months. There's no danger money for crew. The airport is an oasis of calm in the middle of a chaotic war zone. Nevertheless, they're aware of what's going on around them.
When we were crossing already the border from Kuwait to Iraq, the ambience in the cockpit already changed. You have a kind of stress, at least for me.
The journalists have been taken to another location by the terrorists. By now, they're beginning to get uneasy. They'd like to leave, but they have no idea where they are, and they feel that a dangerous situation will develop if they attempt to go.
So, what's going on here?
ماذا يحدث هنا؟
عندنا النهارده عندنا مشكور لكي هتشوفي.
We're going to do special operations today.
هتشوفي.
You'll see. I'll show you.
يا راجل فينك يا راجل؟ بص يا ستي. دي حبيبتنا هنا دي اسمها سام السبعة.
This is SAM 7. We have them from the old Iraqi army. We have approximately 28. We got them from 2 different Iraqi army depots. We have already fired about 25, and we only have 3 left.
They are heat-seeking missiles, equipped with homing devices which detect infrared emissions from a plane's engines.
This SAM 14, better than SAM 7. We don't have so many. I think we should use this one today. It was very good before. في الماضي,
لا يعني قبل كده النهارده.
we shot down a plane in Nasiriyah, and my fighters recorded 177 dead. And we shot down another plane with Americans on, and we killed 70 men.
But no one had ever heard about this. I didn't believe a word of it. From all over Baghdad, you could have seen it. So, I thought the guy was making it up.
Bluffé.
So, what are you going to do with this one today?
فكرك ايه اذا احنا نضرب طيارة تانية.
What do you think? We're going to shoot down a plane.
هنوري لك يا مدام هنوري لك.
I'll show you.
The journalists are getting worried. What if he's not bluffing after all? This is not the story they came for. It's early in the day at Baghdad Airport. A DHL Airbus A300 carrying letters home from US soldiers is just departing. The crew is unaware that just a few kilometers away, a terrorist group has its own plans for the aircraft.
Oscar Delta Lima Lima, cleared for takeoff.
Take off.
The plane is a 24-year-old airliner converted to carry cargo. Its first stop will be the Persian Gulf state of Bahrain. It's a journey they make twice a day.
100 knots. V1. Rotate. V2. Positive climb.
Despite the calm in the cockpit, the crew knows that below 3,000 meters, they're vulnerable to attack from the ground. So far, no plane in Iraq has been hit with a surface-to-air missile, but it's known that the terrorists now have such weapons.
It's a strange ambience, it's a strange feeling. Between the time you take off and you reach 10,000 feet, you know that you are in danger.
Gear up. Gear up. No lights.
Meanwhile, the terrorist leader, Abu Abdallah, appears to have chosen his spot.
He asked us to park our cars pointing outwards so that everybody could leave in a different direction. That's when I should have realized that the bluffing was over.
The journalists are now very alarmed. They cannot leave. They're trapped.
بص 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 شايفه اهو في طريقه شايفه اتصدق يا راجل اتصدق اضرب اضرب يلا يلا اضرب يا راجل يلا اضرب 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 اعمل حاجه شايفه اضرب يا سيدي اضرب اضرب
This is video shot by the terrorists themselves. They'll deliver it to the media in Baghdad the next day.
We had 3 hydraulic systems. They are identified by color, which one is the green and yellow and blue.
Big jets depend on hydraulic power. Hydraulic fluid runs inside pipes throughout the aircraft. When the pilots move the control column, pistons push the fluid in the pipes to climb, descend, or turn the plane. With no hydraulics, pilots have no way to control their flight. The missile has exploded in the wing, where the pipes filled with hydraulic fluid are now draining. It's like driving a car at speed and suddenly losing the steering wheel.
What do we do? What do we do?
What do we do? What could I answer? What could I answer to him? It was a very, very difficult question he asked me.
My initial reaction was, ooh, we have to do something, and I asked to the captain, like, what shall we do, or any ideas or something, and he said, his initial reaction was, we have to go back.
A big jet can survive with one of the 3 hydraulic systems knocked out, maybe even 2, but all 3? None of the controls will work, period.
Blue is good.
I think we hit something.
Blue is gone. We've lost all hydraulics.
All 3 hydraulic systems gone. There's nothing left. The life of the aircraft is now measured in minutes.
That was the end of everything, procedures, what you've been trained all these years. And so all you needed then is to keep calm, common sense, and of course, here where your experience comes, to see whatever is left there. But we had nothing to come back to, or read, or do, or follow.
That DHL is in trouble. He's on fire and he's turning back. Scramble the fire engines, have medevac on standby.
The control columns have become useless. Without the crucial hydraulic system, there's no way of moving the controls.
When you have this kind of emergency, the 3 needle showing 0, and the flight engineer saying you all hydraulic gone, you are terrified as well.
It was fear. We had no control of the aircraft, of course, initially. The aircraft continued to climb at that time until about 12,000 feet.
The plane has started to behave strangely. It climbs to nearly 3,800 meters, then suddenly starts to dive of its own accord.
Sink rate.
Then it climbs again.
Sink rate. Sink rate.
It will not fly.
Sink rate.
Back.
Sink rate.
This cycle repeats itself over and over again, like a mad roller coaster ride. The crew can't stop the plane's wild gyrations. They're still airborne, but somehow they must regain control.
And now, Eric, are you proud of yourself? You look in each mess you are. You know it was dangerous to come here. And what you will do now to get out of here.
I play with controls. Reduce thrust.
By moving the throttles to and fro, perhaps they can flatten out the huge dives and climbs. It's all they can think of.
And then I decide to take the challenge. We have to come back.
There is no training to fly a plane in this condition.
So from that time on, all the books and the procedures and this, they're out of the window.
We have engines. We can use the thrust.
All they have left are the 2 engines, which are undamaged. But how do you fly and land a plane with engines alone? No airliner has ever done it. Certainly not this one. In August 1985, a Japan Airlines Boeing 747 had suffered a catastrophe minutes after leaving Tokyo. The bulkhead at the back of the cabin burst open. The force of the rushing air blew off most of the tail fin and cut all the hydraulic lines. Without hydraulic power, the pilots of the 747 were little more than passengers themselves. A jet with 524 people on board, flying over the mountains of central Japan, was virtually helpless, swaying in the sky like a drunken bird.
It really could be considered a miracle that the pilots were able to keep the airplane flying for 30 minutes or more after having lost all the hydraulics in their flight controls. But it kept circling and eventually worked its way into the mountains, and it became impossible for them to land. There was no real alternative for them at all, except to fly as long as they could and hope for some miracle, which never occurred.
When the 747 hit a mountain, it was the worst single crash in aviation history. 520 people died. Can the DHL crew succeed where the Japanese pilots failed? The first task is to try to calm the wild plunging of the aircraft.
The airplane will tend to go into what's called a phugoid in the vertical mode. It will descend, speed up, therefore pick up more lift, then it would climb, pitch up and climb, it would slow down, lose lift, and so it would go into this, and it was very difficult for the pilots to control that.
They have to do it by using engine power alone, the only thing they have left. They find that if they reduce engine power, the plane's nose drops and they begin to gather speed. If they then push the throttles forward, the nose comes up and they start to climb. But they have to learn precisely when to increase and decrease power. And there's another complication. The damage to the left wing is creating drag on that side and pulling them round to the left in a wide circle.
One of the most difficult things to master, to keep the pitch attitude in a normal way, was already difficult enough. And now on top of this, we had to use asymmetrical thrust because the airplane was banking to the left all the time. There was a part of the left wing which was gone.
Bank, bank!
So they not only have to move the throttles back and forth to flatten out the plane's roller coaster motion, but also try to apply more power to the left engine to compensate for the damaged wing, which is causing it to lose lift. After several minutes of violent pitching up and down, the crew managed to flatten out the flight path.
Even after we've learned how to fly it using the throttles, we still went through, I would say 3 to 4 times, we went through almost uncontrollable condition, you know, couldn't control the airplane. Like very steep dives and banks.
By now, the crew realize that they've been hit by a missile somewhere on the left wing. Their Airbus has become the first civilian aircraft casualty of the war.
I knew we were on fire, that I knew it. So my intention was to come back and land the aircraft. And also, I was afraid to be shot a second time.
Their fears are justified. The terrorist leader, Abu Abdullah, is waiting for a second chance to finish them off. Iraqi terrorists have fired a missile at a civilian plane near Baghdad airport. The left wing is on fire and the crew is in desperate trouble. Now the terrorists aim to finish it off.
They launched a second missile that missed the plane this time. And then he told everyone, "Let's go." And we all left quickly.
Madame Vernier-Pallier later came under a storm of criticism for not doing more to stop the attack, or at least leave the scene.
I think that any journalist in the situation we were in would have reacted exactly as we did. We have been criticized for not having said to the group leader when he told us he was going to fire on an aircraft, "No, sir, we're leaving now." On the one hand, if we had said that to him, it would have meant a bullet in the head, that's clear. And on the other hand, right up to the last minute, right up to the time when they fired the missile, I didn't think they were going to do it. I thought they were still bluffing. While we were trying to find our way back with our chauffeur, we saw that the plane, its left wing was on fire. It was now turning like this. It was like in a film. It was unreal. And it was only when we could see the plane on fire that we thought of the people on board. And then we were scared. I realized the plane could crash, that it would crash. And then I started to realize, why had they done this? It so happens we were there, we were filming, we were journalists, and we were French. So it seems evident that they had set us up. By the time we realized this, it was too late. Everything had gone too fast.
The crew knows nothing of the second missile.
Charlie 2-1.
Hey, Gramps, did you guys say there's an aircraft on fire?
This remarkable video, seen here exclusively for the first time, was shot with the infrared heat-sensitive camera of a US Apache attack helicopter. Apaches routinely patrol the area around the airport, watching out for terrorists.
Second timer 5-4, Tower.
Roger, 5-4 is observing the aircraft inbound under our sighting system. He's got, appears to be a fire on his far left engine.
The intense heat of the fire on the Airbus shows up as a blur on the helicopter's heat-sensitive camera.
That's Lima Lima, Tower.
Because we have a bit of problems controlling the aircraft.
There was a helicopter flying, and he could see that the fire was not from the engine, but it was from the left wing.
So it gave Mario the opportunity to ask the tower again if they could still see some flames or smoke coming from the airplane.
Could you confirm if there's smoke
Coming from the aircraft or fire or anything like that?
Tower Dragon Timber 5-4
You can still see smoke and flame coming from the left tip.
of the left wing.
Okay, left wing tip, fire and smoke, huh?
That's affirmative.
Thank you.
We were on a heading towards the airport. We could see the airport.
Lower the gear. Can I take control? No, I have control. I have control. Lower the gear.
With no hydraulic power, Mario has to crank open the landing gear doors and let the wheels drop down by gravity alone.
The captain said, in fact, we have to land, and he called for the gear down, which is quite a normal thing to go and land.
But it has an unintended effect. Lowering the landing gear has altered the entire balance of the aircraft just when they thought they'd figured out how to control it. It causes the nose to point high in the air and the speed to fall.
No, the speed!
It could easily stall and then crash.
I didn't expect that at all, and I saw the aircraft are taking a pitch up, and then the speed decreasing, and I was retarding the throttle and say no.
The nose has gone up, their speed is falling, they're about to stall. They have no choice but to pull back the throttles to bring the nose back down again. They're nearly at stall speed.
That would have been the end of it. We would have fallen out of the sky.
You have visual on this guy? No, I'm looking right into, he's way out there. Yeah. That's gut-wrenching, man. They're up there doing everything they can.
I was afraid that maybe one wing we stole, and this time it's finished.
I think I'd rather try to crash on a runway than crash into the desert. Yeah, trying to land on a runway where you can just belly up in the desert, the sand would probably put out any fire.
Cautiously, they managed to coax a bit more speed from the engines. Lowering the gear brought them to the brink of disaster, but now the plane is easier to control.
The airplane miraculously became more stable afterwards. That's one of the first factors which proves how lucky we were that day.
Let's land.
Tower Delta Lima Lima.
Oscar Delta Lima Lima, Baghdad Tower. Can you make approach now? Runway is clear for landing.
The Apache helicopter has been joined by others who are powerless to do anything but provide information to the stricken DHL plane.
It looks like you might be too high again. I'm still looking up at the flare. Come on, buddy.
You could hear other aeroplanes talking at the same time.
Oh, crap.
And that on its own was a bit difficult.
Oscar Delta Lima Lima.
Could you please clear 33 left for us as well? Because I think we don't have flight controls as well.
Oscar Delta Lima Lima, runway 33 left is available as well if you need to land there.
Okay, keep both runways open for us.
No more talking, bye.
Did you know Tank 1 Alpha is empty?
Fuel has been steadily streaming out of the tanks in the left wing. Now one of them is empty.
Back.
Bank angle.
Yes, got it.
Bank angle.
Release down. Left wing coming up.
Against all the odds, they've made it back to the airport. An incredible feat of flying. They begin making preparations to land.
Which runway?
We use 33 right, I think.
Lima Lima.
Oscar Lima Lima, go ahead.
Could you please declare full emergency?
Yes, we need the fire brigade because our landing gears might collapse as well.
Oscar Lima Lima, all available assistance is available on the field.
Everyone is on full alert.
Okay, thank you very much, and no more calls.
That guy's got a... He's pretty stressed. Rightfully so.
But on the brink of success, it begins to unravel.
At that time, I realized that we were a little bit too high to come in and land in the situation we were.
That's what I thought as well. We're too high and too near.
We must land. We are too close. We need a long final.
I mean, Steve brought a very important point here, and I think it was really a saver.
Steve is giving his captain news he doesn't want to hear. He can't land. They're too high and too close. If they attempt a steep descent, they'll bury it in the runway. Eric Janot will have to turn around, fly away from the airport for 37 kilometers, turn again, and come back on a long final approach, slowly descending.
If we haven't done this 20 miles, we would have been circling there forever, and until we dropped to the sky or the wind. You can't make it, it's impossible.
Keep the speed up, keep the speed up. I try, I will do the best I can.
And then I realized they were right. We have to go on long final.
But for the last 13 minutes, the wing has been on fire. Do they have enough time?
20 miles final. Okay.
He looks like he's still pretty high. You got that sight now?
He's still got a long way to go, though.
Yeah. It looks like he's turning like an extremely extended final.
Yeah.
And I don't think I can make it in.
Time is running out. The fire is eating up the left wing. They're still heading away from the airport. Then they have to turn and make a 37-kilometer approach. Can they land before the wing fails?
If, for argument's sake, we stayed another 15 minutes in the air with that fire still burning, and maybe that tip of the wing would have broken off, and again, the results would have been disastrous.
Two main structural spars give the wing its strength. The missile has made a 5-meter-long crack in the rear spar. Too much stress and it will snap like a twig. There's another danger. Fuel is streaming out of the punctured tanks in the left wing. If the tanks run dry, an engine will stop and they'll crash.
We were controlling the bank and the pitch of the aeroplane using the two engines. So if we had lost one engine, then we couldn't do anything with the other engine. So the end result would have been disastrous.
Despite the fire, the crew's confidence is growing. Now they have some control over the plane, but the prospects for a safe landing are not good. This is the closest any commercial jet has got to a safe landing with no hydraulics. In 1989 in the United States, the crew of this United DC-10 lost all their controls after an engine blew up, and turbine blades shredded the hydraulic pipes. The pilots managed to regain some control, moving the throttles backwards and forwards like the DHL crew. There were 296 people on board. But at the last minute, as they approached the small provincial airport of Sioux City in Iowa, disaster. Of the 296 people on board, 111 died. So within 4 years, 2 major airliners had crashed because a loss of hydraulics had crippled the planes, killing 631 people. In its investigation report on the Sioux City disaster, the US National Transportation Safety Board asked for urgent research to find ways of controlling big jets that had lost their hydraulics. But over Baghdad, 14 years later, the DHL crew only have their wits to help them as they try to land.
I remember the story of the DC-10 of Sioux City, that it has been done before. The only control we still have on the aircraft in the cockpit was the engine. Nothing else.
The crew are now 28 kilometers away from the airport, getting close to where they will turn in order to make their long final approach to the runway.
15.2. Now we turn right. Not yet.
This is where experience counts now, and you have to rely on what you know.
We were pretty sure that we were going to be able to make it to the airport, but we were absolutely not sure that we were going to be able to make it to the runway.
16.5. Now we turn. 17 miles. Now we turn.
The only way they can turn is by applying more power to the left engine to make them go right and vice versa. They're swinging round to the right, trying to keep the plane steady and descend all at the same time, using nothing but the engines.
Airport's at 340, come right. Now 320. Speed? 10 knots and stable, keep speed up. Yes, yes. 4,000 feet. 3,500 feet. 3,200 feet. You 10 on the head.
Against all their instincts, they'll have to keep the speed up on landing or the nose will drop and they'll crash. They should be landing at around 300 kilometers per hour, but they're coming in 100 kilometers per hour faster. No one knows if the landing gear will take the strain. As they reach 120 meters, the hot air from the ground and strong wind blowing across their flight path upset all their plans.
The wind coming from the left and the turbulence, we were drifting to the right. That's where the airport building was.
It's bumpy.
As the plane approaches the runway, the nose is pointing dangerously low and the left wing is dropping.
Sink rate.
Come on, buddy.
They're carrying too much speed. They could overrun the runway.
Sink rate. Sink rate.
Keep the speed up. We are going left. Yes, I increase.
Sink rate. 50.
If we go to Iceland landing, may go off the runway.
They are landing 3-3 left. Fire trucks on standby, medevac on standby.
I don't think it's gonna be too wide now.
Terrain.
Steady.
Terrain. 40.
Steady.
Terrain.
You are approaching the end of your life. You realize it.
Terrain. Full. Terrain.
Come on, buddy.
30.
Back.
Terrain.
Okay.
Full. Terrain. 20.
Oh. It looks like one of his gear collapsed. Yeah, it did.
Off runway.
He's in the dirt. Dirt, or did he just come off the runway? That's what's left of him.
The DHL Airbus has managed to land through an incredible feat of flying. But their troubles are not over.
Nice landing, wow.
Confirm, evacuate.
Evacuate.
Evacuation.
Both. I handle.
A final irony. After getting safely to the ground against all the odds, one more unforeseen danger.
Straight blow.
Hey guys, don't move! That area has unexploded ordnance. Do not move!
What's that? He's saying there might be bombs here. I don't believe this.
We're coming to get you!
The area is still littered with unexploded bombs and shells left over from the battle to capture the airport from Saddam's men.
Now when we get to you, we're gonna back up and you gotta follow in our tracks. Now we're gonna get you out of here, but you gotta walk right in my wheel tracks, okay? Keep coming. Keep coming, it's not much further now.
Now, for the first time, the crew can see the damage for themselves. They've survived the unsurvivable. No crew has ever successfully landed such a badly damaged airliner. They had to learn and practice a whole new flying technique. But the remarkable thing is, had they known it, the technology had already been invented to save any pilot in this desperate situation. The DHL pilots have managed to fly and land a plane without any flying controls. It's the first time it's happened. Two earlier occasions, near Tokyo and Sioux City, Iowa, ended with the loss of over 600 lives. In 1989, NASA began to investigate ways to land crippled aircraft using only throttle controls. Engineers and pilots came up with software that could cope with total hydraulic failure. It's called PCA, for Propulsion Controlled Aircraft. The PCA concept is simple. Pilots tell the aircraft's flight management computer what they want to do, turn, climb, descend. But instead of sending those commands down hydraulic lines to the control surfaces, the computer orders the engines alone to do it. To test this software, this MD-11 aircraft is landing with no hydraulics and using engine thrust alone. The pilot is not moving the throttles. The PCA software is doing it all for him. Though none of the plane's normal controls were used, the MD-11's landing was not only survivable, but very similar to a normal landing.
I believe that the DHL incident has revived interest in propulsion-controlled aircraft system as an augment to perhaps the systems that we have in today's aircraft that would certainly mitigate the damage that could have been done to this aircraft, and certainly could mitigate the damage done to an aircraft carrying 500 to 600 people.
One of the enthusiasts for the PCA system is Captain Denny Fitch, one of the pilots who survived the Sioux City DC-10 crash.
This is just absolutely an amazing piece of equipment, what they have done and what they have achieved, and the success ratio that we have, the survivability that we now have with modern aircraft completely controlled in hydraulics. To have this occur again and have this aboard the aircraft is a very warm feeling as a pilot.
Fluid is gone. We've lost all hydraulics.
America's Federal Aviation Administration conducted research into PCA, but soon abandoned it. It says the risk of losing all hydraulics is too low to make systems like PCA worthwhile.
The FAA's conclusion after their studies was that these events are so rare as to not require the mandate of an additional system. And of course, they did not consider the event of, or the possibility of a surface-to-air weapons attack on the aircraft.
The DHL is the first plane in Iraq to be hit by a surface-to-air missile. But in recent years, the threat of terrorist-controlled shoulder-launched anti-aircraft missiles has been growing.
There had been roughly 30-odd incidents of commercial aircraft being attacked by man-portable surface-to-air missiles. leading up to the DHL one.
What makes the risk of missile attack in Iraq so serious is that for months nobody was guarding the abandoned depots of the Iraqi army, leaving terrorists free to help themselves to millions of dollars worth of arms.
I believe there are weapon caches everywhere in Iraq. In my opinion, they also have many missiles.
There's widespread fear these terror weapons could soon be targeting passenger airliners all over the world. The US government's Department of Homeland Security is spending over $100 million on research to adapt military counter-missile technology for civilian airliners.
It is inevitable today that commercial aircraft will have to be fitted at some time with laser and infrared jamming systems. The infrared jammer will confuse the seeker for the missile, whereas the laser jammer will direct a pulse into the seeker and burn out the seeker of the missile. Singapore Airlines, Qantas Airlines, they're all looking to install something into their aircraft. If you look at things like the Queen's flight in the UK, the President's aircraft in the USA, and the King of Jordan's fleet, they're all fitted. Terrorism is with us today and will always be with us for the rest of our lives. It's impossible to defeat terrorism, but what is possible is to control terrorism at a commercially acceptable level. If we don't do that, then there's no future for us.
But miraculously, without any of this equipment, the DHL crew had brought their plane to a successful landing. It's the only confirmed occasion in history when a missile has exploded on a large civilian airliner, which has then landed without crashing. For Mario Rafael, it was a good note on which to retire.
It was a good timing, actually, to say goodbye to aviation. As I said, I've been flying for 30 years. And clean record, even to the last minute.
We were lucky, but also we worked. We fight to survive.
I learned some things about life, maybe, but I don't think it makes me a better pilot.
The 3 DHL crew have received some of the highest awards that the civilian aviation community has to offer in recognition of an unprecedented achievement.
Teamwork was absolutely the key factor of bringing the airplane back to the ground with all 3 people alive.
On December the 30th, 2003, 5 weeks after the missile struck the DHL airliner, US General Mark Kimmett gives his daily press briefing in Baghdad.
Of note, on Saturday, Sarhid Sarhid, a former Directorate of Military Intelligence officer suspected of leading a large anti-coalition group in the region and suspected of the downing of the DHL jetliner, died at a coalition medical facility from wounds received in a targeted raid on his complex.
The Americans believed they had killed the leader of the group that fired the missiles at the DHL. Claudine Vernier-Pallier is not so sure.
So I thought he was dead. I tried to verify this later. He wasn't dead, and it wasn't him they got. And my photographer returned to Iraq and saw this person again. He was still alive.
Et qui était donc toujours vivant.
In the fog of war, no one can say for sure whether the man who called himself Abu Abdallah is still alive. But what is certain is that the threat of further missile attacks on planes, both military and civilian, is still there. High above the Indian Ocean, Disaster strikes.
The engine's on fire!
More than 10 kilometers in the air, all 4 engines of a British Airways 747 stop working.
Roger, declare emergency.
Mayday, 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 Speedbird 9.
With no engines and little power, British Airways Flight 9 falls towards the ocean.
Standby ignition on.
The crew fight to keep their plane from crashing into the sea. What has crippled their massive jet, threatening the lives of everyone on board?
Mayday, mayday.
June the 24th, 1982. British Airways Flight 9 cruises through the sky over Indonesia. In a few hours, the plane and all 263 people on board are scheduled to land in Perth, Australia. Phyllis Welch and her daughter are seated in cabin E at the very back of the enormous jet.
How's that heroine of yours, Fanny Price, faring?
Oh, she's having a tough old time at Mansfield Park. It's a good place for me to spend a few hours.
Wouldn't mind being there myself.
It's all right, Mum, we'll get there.
We had already traversed at least 2 time zones. We were very tired. We had flown through Bombay, through Kuala Lumpur, hadn't been able to get much sleep, if any, and it was a dark, dark, pitch-black night.
Ahead of Betty and Phyllis, Charles Capewell is returning home to Perth, Australia, with his 2 boys, Chaz and Stephen.
Right, settle down, lads. Come on. It's time for a nap. Get back to your seat.
No.
What, do you want to sleep here? All right.
It was a good flight. It was going well. Leaving London, it was great. And we was all eager to go home, and the 2 boys were eager to get back to Mum. I thought, well, we'll be home in 3 hours, Perth. They'll be Pat and we'll get in a taxi and we'll be home.
While many of the passengers have been traveling for almost a day, the crew is fresh. They took control at the last stopover in Kuala Lumpur. Captain Eric Moody got his first taste of flying at the age of 16 when he took a gliding lesson. He was one of the first ever trained on the 747.
Roger, check with Jakarta.
Jakarta Control, Speedbird 9 over Halim at level 370.
Speedbird 9, Roger.
First Officer Roger Greaves has been a co-pilot for more than 6 years. Barry Townley Freeman has been a flight engineer on these aircraft for just a little longer.
I'd not flown with Eric before, or Barry. That was the first time we'd actually met on that flight.
As the jet flies over the city of Jakarta, it's cruising at more than 11,000 meters and has been in the air for an hour and a half. Captain Moody checks his weather radar. It shows smooth sailing for the next 500 kilometers.
All right, Roger, it's all clear. Just keep your eyes open. I'll be back in a moment. Just got to use the loo.
Back in the cabin, many of the passengers have fallen asleep. While Charles Capewell and his sons doze, an ominous haze appears above their heads. It's still legal to smoke on passenger jets in 1982. For the cabin crew, though, the smoke seems thicker than normal.
Seems to be a lot of smoke out there.
They begin to worry that a small fire may be smoldering somewhere on the plane.
Maybe someone lit up in the toilet. Let's go see if we can find it.
A fire at 11,000 meters is a terrifying prospect. If there is a blaze somewhere, the crew must find it immediately. In the cockpit, the flight takes an unsettling turn.
Barry and I were just sitting there minding the shop. pitch dark night, of course. And then we started to get these pinpricks of light on the windscreen.
St. Elmo's fire?
I don't think so.
St. Elmo's fire is a natural phenomenon that's sometimes seen when planes fly through highly charged thunderclouds. But there aren't supposed to be any thunderclouds tonight.
Anything on the radar?
No. No, it's clear. I don't like the look of this. Let's get a better look out there.
With the help of their landing lights, the two men are disturbed to see a thin layer of cloud surrounding their plane, even though nothing is showing up on their radar.
But at 37,000 feet, the normal thing you would anticipate would be high cirrus, which is just a thin layer of cloud.
I think we better get the captain back up here.
I was reading in my book, and there was a slight flick of turbulence, just a slight flick, and I glanced over to the left, where I had a clear view of the port wing, and to my surprise, it was covered in a brilliant white, shimmering light, which seemed to be clinging to the wing of the aircraft. I carried on reading, but I found that I kept reading the same paragraph over and over again and not taking in a word of it. I just didn't know what was happening.
In the cabin, the smoke begins to thicken. Stewards have been unable to figure out where it's coming from. If there's a fire, they can't find it.
All right, well, go see that the passengers are comfortable.
Smell anything odd, Mum?
Seems rather smoky in here.
I noticed that thick smoke was pouring into the cabin through the vents above the windows. And that was a very sobering sight.
Turkish cigarettes.
It smelt like sort of a sulfuric electrical smell. And I went on that flight deck expecting to hear that we had some electrical smoke somewhere on the aircraft. But nothing was further from the truth.
When did it start? Or just after you stepped out? Anything on radar?
No, it's clear, not a cloud. Oh my lord, look at engine 4! It's lit up somehow. Captain, have a look at number 1.
It's the same on my side.
None of the crew have ever seen anything like this before. But the light show is just the beginning. Their bizarre flight is about to take a terrifying turn for the worse. Strange lights are striking the windshield of a British Airways passenger jet heading to Perth, Australia. At the same time, the plane's engines are lit by a brilliant white glow.
Look at engine 4! It's lit up somehow.
This light show, if you like, had become more intense. In fact, we ended up sitting there with 2 sheets of brilliant white light in front of us in place of the windscreens.
Inside the cabin, smoke has been growing thicker. Chief Steward Graham Skinner has been organising an intense but quiet search for fire.
What's with all the smoke?
There was smoke in the cabin. It got really, really hot. You were perspiring, literally drenched in perspiration. The acrid smoke was at the back of your throat, up your nose, in your eyes, and you were rubbing this and your eyes were running, and it was, it's not a very nice situation at all.
Flight engineer Barry Townley Freeman has been checking his instruments carefully. He's smelled the smoke, but so far has no indication that there's a fire in any of the plane's systems.
We can't find anything.
With one mystery confronting them, they're suddenly faced with a frightening new situation.
Dad! The engine's on fire!
The whole of the wing was a sheet of light. And I thought, wow. I said, oh, you better close that because we don't know what's that.
Cheers. Sit down. Stephen, close the blind.
Then I realised that, you know, something was dramatically wrong.
There were huge flames coming out of the back of the engines, 20, some people said 40 feet long. These huge jets of sheer flame shooting out of the back of all the engines. Is it going to penetrate from the outside of the aircraft? Is it going to come into the cabin? Are we going to burn to death? Are we going to choke to death on the smoke? What's going to happen? What's causing it? What are they going to do about it?
As fire engulfs the engines, one of them revs loudly and flames out.
Engine failure, number 4.
Fire action, number 4.
Checklist powering gear.
Set.
Thrust lever.
Closed.
Start lever.
Off.
Once one engine fails, you call for the drill to shut that one down. You have drills for certain things so that you don't fly together as a crew forever. You can fly with different people then, and you can standardize the operations.
The instruments do not indicate a fire on the plane, but the passengers can see flames erupting from the engines and stretching down the length of the 747.
I could not see the engines from where I was sitting. I could only see the space behind them. But there was enough glow in that space to convince me that the aircraft was really seriously on fire.
We were in trouble. They knew, as long as they were, they knew we were in bad trouble. And they sort of just looked at me as if to say, well, what are we doing now, Dad?
If anything's going to happen, I want to be close to you. Oh, please.
The cabin crew begins storing anything that's loose. They don't want dishes or bottles flying around the cabin if the plane begins to dive.
Don't worry, it's just friction.
If I was misleading them, then that was for a reason, because I didn't want to get as upset as I felt. I just couldn't believe it. And, you know, this is going through my mind, and yet I'm chatting to the passengers and chatting to the crew, saying, oh, yeah, nothing to worry about. Yeah, it's just a little hiccup, you know.
The 747 is more than 10 kilometers above the ocean. Its engines appear to be burning, and peculiar smoke continues to fill the cabin. And then, the unthinkable happens.
Number 2 engine's gone.
All right then, begin the engine shutdown.
No, wait! We've all gone. All 4 engines have failed.
The other 3 just went out almost immediately, and that's when it begins to be a serious emergency.
Those engines made a grating, rumbling sound, almost like a cement mixer. And then, gradually, the noise just disappeared and they became silent.
A minute and a half, we'd gone from 4 engines running normally to having none.
The 747 has plenty of fuel, yet somehow all 4 of the jet's engines have completely stopped working.
Roger, declare emergency.
Mayday, 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 Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines out of 370. Mayday, 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 Speedbird 9. We've lost all 4 engines.
With no engine power and no idea what has crippled their plane, British Airways Flight 9 begins falling from the sky.
Jakarta Control, Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines. Now out of 360.
First Officer Roger Greaves issues a mayday, but he has trouble getting his message across.
Jakarta Control, Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines. Repeat, all 4 engines. Now descending through flight level 350.
Speedbird 9, you have lost number 4 engine?
This idiot doesn't understand. Jakarta Control, Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines. Repeat, all 4 engines. Now descending through flight level 350.
The air traffic control at Jakarta, unfortunately, seemed to have a slight problem in understanding what we actually were saying.
Only when another plane nearby relays the mayday call do controllers in Jakarta understand.
Now descending through flight level 350.
Speedbird 9, all 4 engines out. Understood?
As far as the crew knows, no 747 had ever lost power to all of its engines before. The crew has to find out why it's happening now.
I think we've cocked something up.
We were concerned and worried that we'd done something wrong, to cause the whole thing.
All 3 of us felt exactly the same, and it was a personal guilt in the sense of, what have I missed? What have I done wrong? Because this kind of thing doesn't happen.
While not built for gliding, even without its engines, a 747 can travel forward 15 kilometers for every kilometer it drops. With no power, Flight 9 has started a long, slow fall. Some 10 kilometers above the ocean, the crew has less than half an hour before they smash into the sea.
When they all stop, you go into automatic mode, obviously. We had practiced this drill on the simulator many, many times. And that's very good and all very well, as long as when it happens to you for real, what happens on the aeroplane is mirrored by what happens to you in the simulator. And I'm afraid that wasn't so.
In the simulator, when all 4 engines stop, the autopilot turns off. But high above the Indian Ocean, Captain Moody sees that his autopilot is still on.
We were all 3 confused and concerned that what was happening to us wasn't what we'd been told would happen to us.
All right, begin restart drill.
In the heat of the situation, they have no time to figure out why the autopilot is still on.
On.
Anything? Anything?
No.
Again.
All right then, from the top, battery.
Check. On.
Crossfeed valves.
Open.
Fire switch.
In.
The standard restart drill takes up to 3 minutes to complete. Plunging from the sky, the crew has fewer than 10 chances to get their engines going before they run out of time.
Lever on. Come on.
Again, gentlemen.
All right, from the top, battery.
Check. On.
Crossfeed valves.
Open.
Fire switch.
In.
At 10,000 meters, Captain Eric Moody decides to turn the plane back toward the closest airport, Halim, just outside Jakarta. But even that is too far away if he can't get at least some of the engines going again.
Jakarta, Speedbird 9, turning left back to Halim, out of 300.
Speedbird 9, radar cannot see you. Squawk Alpha 7700.
Air traffic control asks them to transmit the emergency transponder signal.
Jakarta, Speedbird 9. We are already squawking 7700.
Now the crew is flying back to an airport that can't find them on radar. Without the constant rumble of the engines, the cabin is quiet. Some of the passengers feel the plane beginning to descend. But without communication from the cockpit, they can only guess.
The quietness was unbelievable, because it was sort of, the aeroplane was no engines, nothing, and it seemed to be eerie, a bit surreal really, because like as if you was suspended in space or something. And all you could feel was this quietness and the whimpering from a few people that were really upset.
Some people were sitting quite rigidly, almost as if they hadn't noticed anything. At first it was sheer fear. And then, after a while, it turns to acceptance. You know you're going to die. We knew we were going to die.
What's going on? What's the problem?
It's just a technical fault. I've been through much worse, let me tell you. Everything will be fine.
I think if I'd have sat down and really thought of exactly what was happening, I don't think I would have ever got up again.
One steward came up to us and said, "Are you two ladies all right?" And yes, we said, "We're fine," which was an absolute lie, but that's how it was. It seemed absolutely vital not to panic.
Captain Moody can't restart the engines unless he can keep the plane flying between 250 and 270 knots. But the airspeed indicators aren't working.
Captain, I've got 320 knots on my side.
Well, I've got 270.
Well, bloody hell, that's a 50-knot difference.
I'll change the speed.
Falling from the sky with no engine power, the crew now have no idea how fast they're going. But to have the best chance to restart the engines, Captain Moody has to have the plane flying at the right speed.
So from that point onwards, Eric then varied the speed through just about 100-knot range, hoping that at some point or other, coincidental with us putting the fuel into the engines, that we would actually be at the right speed.
To change speeds, Captain Moody turns the autopilot off. Then he slowly pulls the nose of the jet up to slow it, and then pushes it down to increase his speed. The upsetting roller coaster movement adds to the panic felt in the cabin.
At one time, the aircraft developed a strange motion. It seemed to be climbing steeply and then diving down. That was the sensation we got. And a bucking action that was so violent that we felt it could break the aircraft up in the air.
Pressure warning, Captain. We're at 10,000.
Pressure warning? That's not supposed to do that.
And a warning horn went off. Now, this didn't ever happen on the simulator in this exercise, so it was a bit of a surprise to us.
As well as providing electrical power, the engines on a jumbo jet help keep the cabin pressurized.
With the engines not working, of course, the air wasn't being pumped in. So gradually, the pressure was leaking away.
With all 4 engines gone, the pressurized air is rapidly seeping out. The thinning level of oxygen makes passengers gasp. The crew reach for their oxygen masks. But First Officer Greaves can't get his mask to work.
My oxygen mask, yeah, that was a problem I could have done without. It was stowed above my head. And when I pulled the oxygen mask down, the mask and the tube became separated.
The captain must make a difficult choice. If he continues to descend slowly, it will get increasingly difficult for First Officer Greaves to breathe.
I said, look, if we get down to 20,000 feet quickly, we can all take our oxygen masks off and we can talk and we're back as a crew again.
We had to actually increase the rate of descent to descend to a lower altitude quicker, which in the circumstances was something that we wouldn't really have chosen to do.
So then I dived the aeroplane and got rid of about 6,000 feet in a minute.
The loss of cabin pressure and the steep dive have another terrifying consequence.
The things shot down, they sort of dangled down in front of you. And I looked to see if Stephen had got his, and Chaz had pulled his out of the socket. So I made sure that Chaz got his oxygen. I've seen a few movies on planes, and you know, once that happens, you know you're in serious trouble.
Calm me. Here we go. Breathe normally, Mum, not deep. Breathe calmly.
The oxygen masks came down, and we put those to our faces as had been described in the drill, which fortunately we had been observing at the beginning of the flight. But it seemed that the oxygen supply was not working.
I'm not getting
The cabin crew try to use the public address system to explain what's going on, but it's not working. Chief Steward Graham Skinner makes do with a low-tech backup.
Can you hear me? We're having a small problem with the public address system. So if you would, place your masks over your mouth and nose and breathe normally.
As the passengers struggle with their masks, Captain Eric Moody is running out of options. If his engines don't start soon, he'll have to turn his jet around and try landing on the open ocean. High above the Indian Ocean, the seemingly impossible has occurred. All 4 engines on a British Airways 747 have stopped working, and the crew has no idea why. First Officer Roger Greaves manages to fix his broken oxygen mask, but he's still frustrated by engines that won't start.
All right, Barry, let's start the restart drill. Ready? Set. Battery. Check. On. Standby power. On. Anything? Come on, anything? No. All right, then, let's do it from the top. Battery. Check. On.
First Officer Greaves and Engineer Barry Townley Freeman have actually shortened the standard restart drill. It's giving them more chances to get the engines going, but so far nothing's working.
Come on, you old sod.
The process that we were going through the whole time was just continuous. We hadn't had any success with the drill at all, despite all the efforts we were putting in. But it was the only thing we had left to cling on to, so that's what we did.
From the top again. Battery. Check. On.
I have no idea, and I don't think any of us have, how many times we tried to restart those engines. If I say 20, I would think that's too low. If I said 50, I would think that's probably about right.
As the plane falls lower and lower, Captain Moody faces a brutal choice. A mountain range cuts across the island of Java between his plane and the airport. He knows he has to be at least 3,500 meters high to clear it. But if his engines don't restart soon, they won't make it. At this rate, it will crash in a matter of minutes. It's just a question of where. Captain Moody decides if the engines don't restart soon, he'll turn back towards the ocean and try landing on the water.
All right, are we getting something? It's not starting.
I knew it was so difficult to land aeroplanes on the sea, even when you had everything going for you. And I thought that, well, we haven't got much going for us here. I'd never done it before.
Hiding his concern, Captain Moody addresses the passengers and crew.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have a small problem. All 4 engines have stopped. We're doing our damnedest to get it under control. I trust you are not in too much distress.
Most of the passengers expect the worst.
Ma, in trouble. Plane going down.
We'll do best for the boys. We love you. Sorry, Pa. I thought we were going down, heading for the ocean, which crash. And I thought if she got the note, you know, she knew we were still thinking about it. And we did whatever we could.
Will we be burnt alive? Will we be choked by the smoke? Will the aircraft break up in the air and hurtle us out into space, which was my biggest fear? Or will we come down in the sea and be eaten by sharks alive? Or will we crash into a mountain? Let's crash into a mountain quickly and get all this over.
Well? Nothing. It's not starting. All right, from the top then. Battery. Check. On. Standby power. On.
Finally, Captain Moody has to decide. Carry on and likely crash into the mountains, or turn around and ditch into the sea.
I don't know how to swim.
I couldn't swim anyway, so I thought, well, you know, I'm doomed anyway. And I just hoped that maybe one of the passengers might help the two boys to make sure that they could stay afloat.
Well, anything? No. All right then, from the top again, battery.
We had very few chances left of starting the engines before having to turn out to sea again, because we wouldn't have been able to clear the mountains on the south coast of Java.
Start lever.
Cut off.
Fuel pressure.
Available.
Standby ignition on.
And then, as suddenly as it had stopped working, the fourth engine roars back to life.
Engine 4, back online.
Then all of a sudden there was this sort of like somebody giving the aeroplane a punch from underneath. And then I realised that it might have been an engine. It was boom.
Oh my God, no.
The noise that a Rolls-Royce engine makes when it starts up is low rumbling noise, you know, and it was just, well, it was wonderful to hear it.
A 747 can fly with one engine, but Captain Moody knows that just one engine still won't give him enough power to clear the mountains.
The glass now is half full, it's not half empty. We're now in with a real chance, and I tell you what, the three of us would have dragged that aeroplane around the whole island of Java.
As the plane falls past 4,000 meters, another engine coughs and comes back to life.
Engine 3, back online.
It's followed quickly by the final two.
I can't believe it. Engines 1 and 2, both back online.
From almost certain disaster, the crippled jet is now under full power.
Oh my God,
I realised then that we could make it back to, not to Perth, but to an airport. That's all we wanted, was to land on the earth and you know, be part of the living again. Because while we were up there, we were dead.
Jakarta, Speedbird 9, we are back in business. All four running, all four
This
running.
time, local controllers have no trouble understanding the message.
All four engines serviceable again. Confirm continuing to Halil.
Affirmative, affirmative.
We say, right, let's get this thing on the ground as quickly as we can.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We seem to have overcome that problem and have managed to start all the engines. We are diverting to Jakarta and expect to land in about 15 minutes.
Captain Moody begins climbing, putting plenty of room between his plane and the mountains below. But as he does, the strange lights that he saw when the crisis began reappear in front of the jet.
Now, as soon as we got to 15,000 feet, this St Elmo's fire started again. Now, I'm not slow, so I said, let's get out of here quickly.
But before he can descend very far, the plane is stricken again.
Engine 2 is surging.
The whole aeroplane was shaking. It was just going bang, bang, bang.
The atmosphere in the cabin was very tense and very quiet. By then, I think very few people were talking. I think there were quite a lot of prayers going up.
The engines backfire violently. The captain must make another fateful decision.
Begin shutdown drill.
Checklist, powering gear. Off. Thrust lever.
Closed.
We were reluctant to do it, as you can probably understand, but, you know, that was it. So we were back on 3 engines.
Now, I'm not a coward, but when you've had 4 engines going, no engines going, you get 4 going and tell me, show me any pilot that will quickly shut down that engine, because you're worried that they're all going to stop again.
Jakarta, Speedbird 9, leaving 154, 120. We are now on 3 engines.
As the plane closes in on the airport, First Officer Greaves thinks the windshield is covered in moisture, making it hard to see through.
And I said to Eric, yeah, it's a bit misty out there. So we turned the blowers on to kind of, like demisters on your car to try and clear that. That didn't work. I used the windscreen wipers, and that didn't work.
Somehow the glass itself has been badly damaged.
For some unknown reason, I looked out the edge of my windscreen, and about a 2-inch strip down the edge on the left-hand side, I could see much more clearly. But I couldn't see anything much out the front. It was getting more and more opaque the nearer and nearer we got to the lights.
The crew get a final unwelcome surprise. Equipment on the ground that helps them descend at the proper angle isn't working.
Jakarta ATC, be advised, our glide path is unserviceable.
The localizer, which gives you the left and right of the runway centerline, that was working, but the glide slope, which gives you the actual profile for the descent, was not working.
After all the troubles they've been through, now the crew has to land their plane manually.
We then continued with Eric flying the localizer and me calling out the distance and the altitude that he should be at.
300 feet, Captain.
So he was then able to adjust his rate of descent to what I was telling him as far as the glide slope was concerned.
200. 150 feet, Captain. 100. 50 feet. 30 feet.
Oh my God. Oh my God. We're on the runway.
Reverse.
$90 knots, 80 knots.
We're down. Could really go for a cold soda.
And the aeroplane just landed itself. It seemed to anyway. It kissed the earth. It was beautiful.
Wow, that's amazing.
Safely on the ground at Halim Airport in Jakarta, passengers celebrate the end of a harrowing ordeal. They also want to know what happened. No fire had been found, so why had smoke filled the cabin? How could all 4 engines have stopped at nearly the same time? What were the strange lights that surrounded the plane? In the cockpit, the flight crew are relieved, but also concerned that they might be at fault.
The first thing that we did, having parked the airplane and shut it all down, was to then go through all the paperwork to see if there was possibly anything anywhere in it that might have given us any pre-warning of some sort of phenomenon that caused what happened to us.
Every time, because it's going to come back to us.
The damage to the 747 is extensive. From the outside, the crew realize that their windshield had been deeply scratched. They see bare metal showing through where the paint has somehow been stripped away. And they still have no idea why any of it happened. When investigators uncover the cause of the disaster, Flight 9 changes pilot training around the world. During a calm flight to Australia, all 4 engines of a British Airways 747 suddenly stopped working. After a long, terrifying descent, the crew managed to restart the engines and land.
Wow, that's amazing.
They spent an excited and largely sleepless night in Jakarta before returning to Halim Airport to inspect their plane.
And we went back the next day to look at it in daylight. The aeroplane had lost its sheen, and in some places it had been sandblasted quite well, and all the decals and the paint had come off. It was very little to see until they stripped the engines down.
The engines were manufactured by Rolls-Royce. Their investigation was led by a former engineer, Malcolm Grayburn.
3 of the engines were removed in Jakarta following the incident and were ferried back via cargo aircraft to London Heathrow and then transported to South Wales, where the engines were in fact stripped down into piece parts. And it was there that I got involved.
Grayburn was stunned by what he saw. Much of the engine was badly scratched and scored.
We did do a forensic analysis of the engines, and we did record it all in terms of photographic analysis, and also we did a lot of laboratory analysis.
Grayburn discovered the engines were choked with fine dust, pieces of rock and sand. When it was closely studied, they learned that the debris was clearly volcanic ash. Days after their harrowing flight, the passengers and crew learned that the night they were flying, there'd been a major eruption of the Mount Galunggung volcano, located just 160 kilometers southeast of Jakarta. Tom Casadevall is director of the US Geological Survey and has studied the Galunggung volcano.
Indonesia is the world's most volcanically active country. It has more than 130 historically active volcanoes, meaning volcanoes which have erupted in the last several thousand years. Galunggung erupted explosively early in the 1980s. In April, May, June of 1982, the eruptions became increasingly more powerful.
The eruptions were large and the damage was extensive. More than 60,000 people were evacuated from the area around the mountain. The night Flight 9 flew nearby, the volcano erupted again. As the ash cloud rose more than 15,000 meters into the night, winds pushed it to the southwest, right into the path of British Airways Flight 9. Never before had a volcanic cloud seriously affected an airplane. Could the ash really have crippled this flight?
Roger, declare emergency.
Mayday, 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 Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines.
Unlike ash that you might see in a chimney or after a fire in a forest, this is not soft material at all. This is very fine, ground-up particles of solid rock and minerals. This material is very, very abrasive. It's very angular in shape. If you were to see it under a microscope, you would see very sharp angles. And so that's what caused the abrasion.
In addition to sandblasting the windshield and all the leading edges of the plane, could the ash cloud explain all the other strange phenomena the passengers and crew had experienced?
Remember, the aircraft is moving in close to 500 miles per hour as it's flying into that cloud. Even though it's a very fine material, it can still cause abrasion and friction on the skin of the aircraft. Because it's such a dry environment up there, that frictional electrification produces the glow that we refer to as St. Elmo's fire.
The electrification also caused the interference in communication experienced by the crew.
Speedbird 9, you have lost number 4 engine?
Some of the volcanic ash that was sucked in and ground up by the engines was also blown into the plane. And when passengers and crew saw it swirling through the cabin, they feared the worst.
You're a passenger, you're looking out the window, suddenly you start breathing this sulfur-laden air in the cabin, and it probably is a choking, probably a shocking sensation. It's essentially a house of horrors type situation.
While the volcanic ash caused the visible scarring, filled the plane with smoke and fouled communications, could it cause the engines to flame out as well?
X-ray from front to back of the
A turbofan jet engine works by sucking in enormous amounts of air. The air is then highly pressurized by the engine's compressor. This tightly packed air is mixed with fuel and ignited. The force of this reaction propels the jet through the sky.
The temperature in the combustion chamber where this ash is flowing through are around 2,000 degrees centigrade. And so the volcanic ash we know melts at about 1,300, 1,400 degrees.
But when the liquid ash reached deeper into the engine, it cooled slightly, turning into a sticky, molten goo. It attached itself to the engine and began choking it.
We got a fundamental disturbance of the airflow in the main core of the engine, which caused the engine to backfire, and the engine's flamed out, and that was the cause of the problem.
Backfires occur when the engine isn't burning cleanly.
The engine's on fire!
There's too much fuel and not enough oxygen.
Engine failure, number 4.
Fire action, number 4.
Checklist, power and gear.
On Flight 9, the backfires were the cause of the enormous jets of flame many passengers saw behind the engines. After struggling against the choking effects of the ash cloud, the engines on board the 747 flamed out. What Grayburn found next was that a remarkable piece of chemistry saved the plane.
As soon as you came out of the volcanic ash, and the engines were not running, remember, so everything cooled down, it was enough for this stuff to break off and allow the engines to restart.
When enough of the molten ash was gone, the engines were clear again, and Townley Freeman's frantic efforts to restart them paid off.
Engine 4, back online.
We have learned quite a bit, and we've incorporated this learning into pilot training. Pilots now, for example, know what signs to look for when they might be in an ash cloud, and those signs include the odor of sulfur in the cabin, dust accumulating in the cabin, and if you're at night, you might look out and see the frictional electrification or the St. Elmo's fire on the leading edges of the aircraft.
Another important lesson learned from Flight 9 is that volcanic ash clouds do not appear on normal weather radar, which reflects water. Since the clouds are dry, they're all but invisible to radar. That knowledge has led to better communications between the geologists that study volcanoes and the international airlines that fly over them. The crew of Flight 9 was showered with awards and commendations in the months after their incredible night.
I thought the airmanship displayed by this crew during this event was absolutely fantastic. The way that they managed to guide this aircraft back down to a safe landing after having been through such extreme circumstances, it was fantastic the way they recovered this aircraft. Absolutely brilliant.
For everyone on board Flight 9, the terrifying plunge through the skies had a lasting impact. Betty Tutell was so struck by the events of that night that she wrote a book about the ordeal.
This was an event which was unique in aviation history, and it seemed to me absolutely vital that it should be put on record, and I wondered who was going to do this. But no sooner had that thought entered my mind than I thought, I'm going to do that.
Tutell would also end up marrying a man she met on the flight, James Ferguson. Charles Capewell and his 2 sons made it home 2 days after they touched down in Jakarta. 25 years later, both Chaz and Stephen still live in Perth.
Our time hadn't came and that was it. From then on, I took a different view of life. When your time comes, there's nothing you can do, but you can still hope. And we hoped, and we got out of it.
Not long after their fateful flight, Captain Eric Moody created the Galungung Gliding Club. Every member of the crew and all passengers were automatically admitted to this exclusive group. The survivors of British Airways Flight 9 happily stay in touch to this day. chaotic end of a bitter war. The world's largest airplane is loaded with orphans and headed for safety.
Advancing throttles now.
Time. Go.
We needed to get out of missile range.
But only minutes into their escape,
there was this loud explosion, one quick bang.
What was that?
the plane is out of control.
I kept going faster and faster and faster.
And headed for the ground.
Prepare for emergency landing! Mom, get down!
And then it was quiet.
South Vietnam, April 1975. After more than 10 years of fighting, the United States is on the verge of defeat. The end of the war is fast approaching. The enemy is closing in on the capital. On April the 4th, at a military base in the South Vietnamese capital of Saigon, a strange cargo is being loaded onto an enormous C-5A Galaxy. This is one of the largest planes in the world. The C-5A is primarily a cargo plane. Its hold is wide enough to carry tanks and tall enough to move buses. Above the cargo area, there's a small number of seats. Both the passenger area and the cargo bay are being pressed into service today. Dozens of Vietnamese orphans are being loaded onto the plane to be flown to safety. There are thousands of orphans to be flown out before the North Vietnamese take Saigon. Barb Adams works for the American Embassy. She and her daughter Linda are also fleeing.
On April 4th, my mom came home and told me that I had 1 hour to pack one suitcase and that we were going to be escorting the orphans on an orphan airlift back to the United States. When my mother and I went upstairs to the troop compartment, there's traditional airline seats, and all of the seats were filled with babies.
Sergeant Ray Snediger is in charge of loading the plane's massive cargo bay.
Make sure it's secure. We got people down here.
It was hard to control the situation. So many people were there, so much news media, so many people from the orphanages, so many military people, that it was actually pure chaos.
Just the day before, American President Gerald Ford announced the start of this desperate mission of mercy, a remarkable effort called Operation Baby Lift.
I have directed that C-5A aircraft and other aircraft especially equipped to care for these orphans during the flight be sent to Saigon. I expect these flights to begin within the next 36 to 48 hours.
Arnold Isaacs was covering the end of the war for the Baltimore Sun.
We had transport aircraft flying into Saigon every day, unloading military supplies and going back empty. And so it was decided that they could carry out the orphans on those returning flights. There were a lot of cameras and reporters out there covering the loading and the departure of the plane.
Captain Bud Traynor is in charge of Operation Babylift's first flight.
I got a call from the command post back in the States, and they said to me, how many people could you take out of Saigon if you were asked?
Because of the last-minute nature of the flight, they're running behind schedule. The plane is already 5 hours late, and Captain Traynor wants to be in the air. He orders the cargo bay doors to be closed.
Tell me what to...
Doors closed. Loadmaster closed cargo bay doors.
The youngest of the 145 children have been crammed into the upper passenger section of the jet.
My mother and I were both assigned 3 rows of seats with maybe 4 to a row. So it would be 12 to 15 babies that we would be taking care of on the flight, feeding them, changing them, whatever they needed to have done.
Ina? Have a good flight, Ina.
There are 102 older children in the cargo area below. A number of adults from the American Embassy are also down here, keeping an eye on the orphans. Getting out of Vietnam starts by leaving the safety of the US base.
Advancing throttles now.
15. 20. Time. Go.
Gear up.
I remembered that we had to take off at a pretty steep angle. And we didn't have seats, so we were to kneel on the floor between the seats during takeoff.
The cargo plane is heading for Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. It's a 2.5-hour flight. From there, the orphans will be sent to adoption agencies in North America and Australia.
We needed to take off from Saigon and make a very rapid ascent to get out of missile range.
Cargo planes are easy targets. They're slow-moving and large. The possibility of an attack is very real. Just 5 days before, North Vietnamese troops captured the South's second largest city, Da Nang. South Vietnamese forces are retreating towards Saigon. In the capital, the situation is chaotic. Thousands of South Vietnamese civilians are desperate to leave.
Every day, another province was lost, especially after Da Nang fell. The population of Saigon, I think, began to fall into a sort of a paralyzed, petrified terror. Never, not for one moment that I remember, did you have a feeling of anyone rallying to defend the country.
How's the air in the troop compartment?
It's all right.
The baby's still squalling, or they quieted down with all the noise?
Most are asleep.
Just as well.
Then, shortly after takeoff, as the plane climbs through 23,000 feet,
decompression occurred, the plane filled with this mist. And so until it dissipates, you cannot see.
And there was this loud explosion, one quick bang.
What was that?
And she said, I'm not sure. And you could feel the plane heading downward.
Debris started flying around.
It's a classic decompression. Somewhere there's a massive hole in the plane's fuselage. The air inside the jet is rushing out. At 23,000 feet, there's barely enough oxygen to breathe.
So I looked over at the co-pilot, and he was putting on his oxygen mask, and I thought, I'd better do that too.
The oxygen masks have dropped automatically, but on such an overcrowded flight, there aren't enough to go round. The ones that are available weren't designed to reach babies.
As I looked out the window, I saw the ocean. And I said to my mom, I said, we're crashing, aren't we?
At the back of the passenger compartment, Lieutenant Marshal Wirtz checks in with the crew. From there, she can usually see down to the cargo bay below her.
Pilot, this is Wirtz. I'm at the top grade of the troop compartment. I can see the China Sea out the rear of the plane.
What?
The cargo door is gone.
With more than 300 people on board, Captain Bud Trainor's jet has lost its breathable air. Somehow, his massive aircraft has been badly damaged. And he's a long way from a safe place to land. The inaugural flight of Operation Baby Lift will not make it out of Vietnam. The next few minutes will determine if anyone even survives. Oxygen levels are dangerously low. Unlike the passenger compartment above, there are only a few portable masks for passengers in the cargo bay.
My first priority after a rapid decompression is to get the aircraft back down to a breathing altitude for all the passengers, which is 10,000 feet.
Taking it back to the airport.
And so I turned 180 degrees, and now I'm heading back for Saigon.
But before he gets back to Saigon,
Sergeant Snedeker.
Trainer needs to know how bad the situation is.
The airplane is going down in a left bank. At that particular point, I sense that we're going down. I go to the cockpit.
Sir! See what's going on.
And Captain Trainer tells me to go to the cargo compartment to see what's happening down there.
When I was in my descent, I went to my maximum speed, which is what you're supposed to do, to get to 10,000 feet. I got to my maximum speed, and I pulled back on the yoke, and nothing happened. I kept going faster and faster and faster.
Trainer's plane is diving to the ground, and he can't get it to pull up. At the back of the plane, Ray Snedeker descends into the center of the storm.
When I came down, I noticed there was a lot of chaos in the cargo compartment. Obviously, people were frightened. So I'm actually crawling and stepping over people that are combat loaded on the floor. And I saw this huge gaping hole in the back of the airplane. All daylight back there.
And then Snedeker spots what could be an even more serious problem.
Hydraulic fluid is pumping out. Control cables are dangling in the breeze, flopping back and forth, and it just reminded me of looking at some spaghetti. That was the first thought in my mind.
The flight engineer also notices that the plane is losing its hydraulic fluid fast.
Pilot, we've lost number 1 hydraulic system. We've just lost number 2 hydraulics.
Hydraulic fluid helps the crew move the massive control surfaces on the plane. The rudder and elevator at the back, and the ailerons and flaps on the wing. There are 4 separate hydraulic systems on the plane. Now 2 of them are completely empty. And as Trainer dives towards 10,000 feet, his plane is going much faster than it should, and he can't pull up.
And I kept pulling back on the yoke, thinking that I could slow down, pull back more and more and more.
I'm not getting anything out of the yoke. How about you? Nothing.
And we were just totally puzzled. What is going wrong?
Pulling on his yoke should bring the plane's nose up and slow it down. If he can't pull the plane up soon, it'll plow straight into the ground.
And I'm concerned at that point we're still falling. We're not leveling out.
In the belly of the plane, Ray Snediger reports what he sees to the cockpit.
Pilot! Cargo bay!
Go ahead.
And I had told him that the part of the ramp was missing, pressure door was gone, and hydraulic lines and control cables had been cut.
The problem is now much worse than we thought.
Declare an emergency. Saigon, this is MAC 80218, and we're declaring emergency. We require immediate return to base.
Unlike commercial airlines, there was nobody that came onto the PA system and announced what was happening. So I just kind of focused on the children.
After struggling with his crippled jet, Trainer's efforts finally seem to pay off.
And now the airplane levels itself off, and we're saying, wow, thank goodness that we're finally making it out of this.
As quickly as it leveled off, the plane begins to climb again. The nose of the jet begins pulling up into the sky.
And so I relax the yoke, and what happens? Nothing. I'm still going straight up now.
Unless Trainer can gain some speed, his plane will soon stall and tumble from the sky.
And it got higher and higher, and pretty soon I'm going almost straight up.
In desperation, he dips one wing, forcing the nose down.
I'm now in a very, very steep dive, and there's nothing I can do, seemingly, to bring the nose up. And so, counterintuitive, I added power, and when I did that, the airplane pulled itself out of the dive, and I started to go back up again, but this time I stopped it at 10,000 feet and rolled out, and I realized that I had learned how to control the airplane.
Trainer can't control his plane's pitch as he usually does, by pushing and pulling on his control column. Instead, by gently increasing and decreasing power to his engines, he seems to be able to keep his plane level.
At that point, I realized that my only pitch control was the throttle.
The plane has descended to 10,000 feet. There's now enough oxygen to breathe.
100, it's safe to remove our mask. Gear down, before landing checklist.
I headed directly for Saigon and began a descent and began positioning myself for a final, much like you would in a glider.
Don't worry. They're taking care of it up in the cockpit. We're gonna be down soon.
I'm trying to provide comfort to these passengers. At the same time, I know we're in serious trouble because the airplane is still going down.
Captain Trainer has coaxed his injured jet down to just over 4,000 feet. 11 kilometers from the airport, he turns his jet to line up with the runway when his plane surprises him again.
In the final turn to the runway, when I banked the airplane, the nose dropped and I couldn't continue my turn. I had to level the wings so that I had enough lift that the nose didn't keep descending.
Captain Trainer had to stop turning before he could line up with the runway. He's now losing altitude fast, and his prospects are becoming increasingly grim.
While we were working in the cargo compartment, the loadmaster came to me and said, we need to get upstairs because we're going to crash land. When I get to the top of the ladder, I've changed my mind and think I need to be in the cargo compartment when this airplane does get on the runway so I can help evacuate down there. As I try to leave, the flight engineer grabs me by my left elbow, throws me into a seat, and about the time I hit the seat, I can hear the ground screaming. It's a loud scream. It's coming closer.
Prepare for an imminent crash landing.
Get down on the floor! Prepare for emergency landing! Mom, get down!
When we started to go down, my mother and I were focusing on what should we be doing to brace for impact.
We had a big open field in front of us. When I got within about 200 feet of the ground, I said, "We're going in."
The plane is hurtling towards the ground at almost 500 kilometers per hour.
I reach down, grab my seatbelt, and when the seatbelt snaps,
we touched the ground relatively easily, and we popped back in the air. The jump seat said to me, "Bud, we're gonna make it." But I could see looming ahead of me was this huge, huge river. So I added power.
My mom was on one side of the aisle, and I was on the other. And she says, "Come over here and sit with me."
And even with full power at that point, I was still continuing to sink.
my whole life went into slow motion. The airplane is coming apart where I'm sitting. All kinds of debris is flying through the air. And it went on and on and on. It seemed like forever.
When I was going upside down, I remember saying, goodbye to my wife a couple of times, because I was gone. And then it was quiet.
When the plane came to a stop, I looked for my mom. I didn't see her anywhere. At that point, it was all a little bit surreal that I didn't even really know what had just happened. All I knew was that we needed to get the babies out of there.
Trainer and the rest of the cockpit crew have survived.
When I stepped out of the window, what was clear after you looked around, the airplane broke up into its component parts. The tail dropped off, the flight deck broke away, the troop compartment and the wings, they separated from the cargo compartment. The cargo compartment itself disintegrated, essentially.
Behind the cockpit, the plane's wings, which hold the fuel tanks, are burning. The passenger section of the plane is largely intact and separated from the scorching heat of the burning wings. Lieutenant Wirtz and many others who had been in the passenger section survive.
Then we started bringing babies out. And I could hear some helicopters coming. At that point, I was not looking for my mother because I had been assured that she was okay. I was to go to the hospital and just wait for her there. And then that's when I took a couple of the babies and walked over and got on.
A day that began with the promise of hope has ended in disaster. Just minutes after the crash of the first baby lift mission, rescue workers are on the scene searching for survivors. Almost everyone in the cargo area was killed instantly when the plane slammed down the second time. The dead, the injured, and the survivors are taken to hospitals in Saigon and Thailand.
Since I was not injured, I just took a seat and was waiting for my mother while they brought in a lot of the babies. Then somebody came over to me and told me that my mother had died. I remember holding on for dear life, so she said, "Come over here and sit with me."
Barb Adams' last decision was to be near her daughter.
Just as I sat down on the floor, we must have hit. She flew forward somewhere. And that's the last time I saw my mother.
"175 people survived the crash of the Air Force jet. But more than 150 have been killed. More than half of them were children.
And it was really such a blow in what had already been a very tragic and sad story of the collapse of South Vietnam. And then who would have thought that in the middle of all that tragedy, that the American Air Force would crash a plane full of Vietnamese babies and small children.
The investigation begins immediately. The next day, along with the investigators, Captain Bud Traynor returns to the smoldering wreckage of his plane on a special mission of his own.
I had to leave a couple of crew members out at the aircraft. And so I went back the next morning.
The bodies of 2 dead crewmen are still pinned down by the wreckage.
So we took a lot of tie-down chains and put them together and did the old heave-ho with a whole lot of people to move the flap of wreckage that was pinning the 2 crew members. And we got them out of there. It's always important to finish the job, and we did. But then I had a very naive approach to what was going to happen next. I kind of envisioned the guys in the silver helmets and put out the white rope. This is going to be a secure site. And that was when I got the shock that, hey, there are no guards out here. There's a Vietnamese soldier going through my suitcase wearing my flight jacket. And he had an AR-15, and I didn't.
That's my jacket. I'm Bud Traynor.
And we established that my coat had the same name on it.
That's mine.
As my flight suit. And so the coat he was wearing was mine. So he begrudgingly gave me my coat and then proceeded to go through the rest of my suitcase.
It's not only Trainer's jacket. Looters are picking the plane clean. Dave Scheiding is a structural engineer with the Air Force.
When we got to the site, we had some concern to begin with because there was a tremendous amount of civilian people out there actually picking up parts, which, of course, that didn't help us much as far as the investigation goes.
He's part of a team that goes to Saigon to try to figure out why the plane crashed.
This investigation was very unique from a couple of standpoints. The first standpoint, of course, the people taking parts away from us, but second, the country was in extreme chaos. It was essentially falling.
Frank Huskin is also part of the investigative team.
The NVA and the VidCong are all around, and we were only out there during the daytime, but it was a very uncomfortable feeling. Very uncomfortable feeling.
One of the first things we wanted to rule out was sabotage and a bomb. So we brought in dogs from the Philippines, bomb-sniffing dogs.
Take him back there to the rear of the plane.
With North Vietnamese soldiers so close, a direct attack or sabotage are obvious theories.
Initially, they had all thought that it had been a bomb placed in the luggage compartment, or it had been a missile that shot the plane down.
During the rush to board the aircraft, personal luggage was loaded but not thoroughly checked. This added to the speculation that a bomb may have been smuggled on board. The dogs find no trace of a bomb, and investigators find no evidence of explosive residue on the plane. It clearly wasn't attacked, but something had caused the cargo door to fail.
We had to find the doors, if at all possible, to make sure that we didn't have a problem with other C-5s that would cause this type of crash.
Soon, the massive C-5As will be desperately needed to get America out of Vietnam. Finding out what happened to this one couldn't be more urgent.
It was beyond important. At the time, we had approximately 100 C-5 aircraft. We grounded the C-5s until such time that we could figure out, one, what the problem was, and two, what were we going to do to prevent it from happening again.
Hey, guys!
As they examine the wreckage, investigators also try to find out why the crew had such difficulty controlling the plane.
Look how this is sheared off.
The cables that Ray Snediger saw leaking hydraulic fluid were the ones that controlled the plane's elevator. Since the elevator controls pitch, Captain Trainer had no way of guiding his plane up and down.
Cargo bay!
Declare an emergency. Saigon. Emergency. Return to base.
When there's no control of the elevator, which allows for up and down pitch, an airplane will set up an oscillation up and down. His oscillation started as nose was going down, and then it picked up speed, and then it started pitching up.
A falling plane's aerodynamic properties will force it to follow a predictable pattern. As lift increases, the nose naturally tilts upwards. Without the elevators to counteract the motion, it will continue until the plane moves so slowly that it stalls, falling back to the ground. It explains the strange motion of the giant C-5A. By adjusting the thrust to his engines, Trainer was able to keep the jet from rising and falling. Investigators believe the cables were sheared off when the cargo door exploded from the plane. But they still don't know why the door failed in the first place.
Then we made the determination we were going to have to try and find the doors.
But the doors are somewhere at the bottom of the South China Sea.
Our next problem was trying to figure out the ballistics of those doors. Nobody had ever even thought of figuring out ballistics of two doors flying through the air from 23,000 feet.
Relying on the airspeed and the altitude at the moment of decompression, investigators learned the plane was 46 kilometers from the coast of Vietnam.
When the doors went out, the airplane was moving across the water at about 600 feet per second. Therefore, we had to come down with a pretty good estimate for the Navy to even know where to look.
Ships from the U.S. 7th Fleet crisscrossed the South China Sea looking for the rear door. For the first several days, they can't find anything. The South China Sea has swallowed the evidence. At the crash site, investigators are becoming increasingly frustrated. A great deal of wreckage has been stolen by scavengers. An important clue could be among the pieces taken away. To retrieve these parts, the Air Force offers to buy them back.
The strategy was to provide leaflets throughout the city of Saigon and the surrounding area. We want every piece of material from the aircraft back, and we will also pay you if you will turn this in to us.
11 days after the crash, flyers are delivered to local officials and distributed throughout the city. Investigators do eventually recover the camera that was used by a film crew on board the plane. They hope it can show them exactly what happened. But the film inside the camera has already been removed. Another piece of the wreck turned in during the buyback program is just what they're looking for.
We were trying to get the black boxes back because that's the thing we really wanted.
All C-5As are fitted with a computer system that records vital information about the plane's operation. It records engine settings, airspeed, altitude, and hundreds of other parameters onto a magnetic tape. The system is called Mayday, Malfunction Detection Analysis and Recording System. It wasn't found at the crash site. The Mayday is eventually returned for a reward, but it proves to be a disappointment.
It didn't identify the reason for the doors and the ramps failing, but it did provide us a sequence of events in a lot of areas, including altitude, airspeed, the performance of the aircraft itself during that time frame.
As investigators continue to look for the cause of the crash, the situation in Vietnam gets worse. 2 days after they receive the Mayday, the South Vietnamese president resigns. On April the 23rd, 100,000 North Vietnamese troops approach Saigon. The noose around the city is tightening quickly.
While we were out in the rice paddy, you could see burning hamlets and villages, and in the distance they were on fire. You could hear the explosions and so forth of mortars.
While the situation in Vietnam continues to unravel, the US Navy finally has some success at sea. On April the 26th, they find the cargo ramp and part of the pressure door of Trainer's plane. If investigators don't find the answers here, they may not find them anywhere. They're running out of time, and they're running out of leads. When the ramp is examined, investigators make a disturbing discovery.
On that ramp, 2 of the stirrups were in great condition. They were perfect. They had not failed, so obviously it told us that at least 2 of the locks had just unlocked themselves.
The C-5A has 14 locks holding the rear cargo door shut, 7 on each side. The door recovered from the sea tells investigators that for some reason, 3 of the locks designed to hold it shut had either unlocked in flight or had never locked at all.
This flight was actually like a ticking bomb. When they closed the ramps, all those locks would look like they were in a locked position. When it took off, the fuse was lit. And as the aircraft climbed out, the fuse kept burning.
As the plane climbed away from Saigon, the pressure outside the jet dropped. The air inside pushed with increasing force against the cargo door. Then, as the plane passed through 23,000 feet, with 3 latches unlocked, the pressure on the door was too much.
With the 3 locks that failed all in a row, it was just too much load for the other 4 locks to actually pick up, and which resulted in the catastrophic failure of the ramp itself.
But investigators still don't know why the locks failed. Before they can find the answer, the situation in Vietnam deteriorates completely. Saigon is under siege. On April the 27th, the investigators take all of the evidence they can and leave. It's simply too dangerous to stay.
When we left Saigon, we were the last 2 C-141s to leave Tan Son Air Base. They were essentially losing their country at that time, and after that, it was only helicopters that got out.
Investigators hope they have all the clues they need to solve the mystery of the crash. They know they won't be coming back to Vietnam to look for any more. April the 30th, 1975. The war in Vietnam ends. From the rooftop of the American embassy, the last remaining Americans in Vietnam are flown to safety. Back in the United States, investigators continue their work. Since the C-5 is in service around the world, they need to know why 3 locks on the cargo door failed.
When we got back to Texas, it was to help us verify the failure sequence.
Investigators discover something potentially alarming about the cargo plane's rear door. Parts from the C-5A were actually removed from the plane, cannibalized to service another cargo plane. The locks on the rear door of the C-5A are connected to each other by a series of tie rods. The rods can be lengthened or shortened to ensure the locks are completely closed. It's these tie rods which were removed from the baby lift plane. At the time, the enormous cargo planes were in constant demand.
The Air Force was very short of parts, and so they came up with a standard practice for maintenance that they could cannibalize parts off of aircrafts that are not being flown. It's authorized, and it's a good operation if you respect it and treat it properly.
The tie rods were replaced before the baby lift plane left for Saigon, but for some reason they hadn't held. To try to figure out what happened, investigators rebuild one of the locks that was supposed to keep the rear door closed.
We essentially built a working model of that ramp, and we had to do that because we didn't get all the parts back because of the people picking them up, parts out in the ocean and everything that we never got back.
Investigators aren't convinced that the problem is in the basic design of the lock. They suspect that before the plane left California, the engineers who replaced the rods didn't follow the proper procedures.
When we're talking about the locks, the distances that we're talking about are very, very small. We could be talking about the 16th, 32nd of an inch difference between being locked and unlocked.
The re-rigging was done before the plane left the United States.
Show me how you re-rig it.
After the locks were re-rigged, they should have checked to make sure they were working. That wasn't done. Without the check, no one would have noticed that the re-rigging was done improperly.
I would say that this accident actually started back at Travis Air Force Base in California. When the 2 tie rods that had been cannibalized earlier were replaced, they were not installed properly.
Loadmaster, close cargo bay doors.
When the door was opened and shut in Saigon, there was a warning that not everything was perfect.
We had some difficulty getting it to lock, so we had to open and close it 3-4 times. But it seemed to be routine, and in the heat of the moment, we didn't think anything about it.
But 12 minutes after liftoff, as the plane continued to climb, The 3 improperly closed locks were forced open by the building air pressure. The remaining locks could not take the extra load. The cargo door burst open and was torn off the fuselage.
You just can't take shortcuts. And if it's pulled a couple of rods out, run out and put them back in, that's not going to hack it.
The investigators have found their answers, and in their final report make specific recommendations that will make the C-5A safer. As a result, the Air Force designs a pin that slips through each lock. If the door isn't properly shut, the pins can't slide into place.
We essentially Murphy-proofed it by putting steel pins in there so that when the lock is in the over-center position, if you can insert these safety pins, then you know that the system is properly rigged.
Ray Snedeker retired from the Air Force as a Chief Master Sergeant.
This mission was probably the most discouraging in some ways based on part of the outcome, but also it was refreshing in the fact that we displayed such good airmanship, such courage, and we were able to save so many people.
After 28 years of service, Bud Traynor retired from the Air Force as a colonel.
I think everyone second guesses themselves to see if there was something else that they could do. I am very fortunate in that I never found something that I said, I sure wish I had done X. It just wasn't there.
That pilot did a super job. The fact that anybody survived this crash is just remarkable. The ones that were saved are very fortunate that that particular crew was in charge of that aircraft. Being a pilot myself and knowing they only had 1 aileron and 4 engines, by rights they all should have been dead.
Investigation Board does not normally recommend decorations. That's not part of their job. But in this case, we recommended to the Air Force that they be considered for a high decoration.
Surviving crew members, including Captain Bud Traynor and Sergeant Ray Snedeker, were awarded medals by the Air Force for heroism and extraordinary achievement. One of the orphans that survived was baby Ina.
Ina?
Today, she's known as Kelly Jackson Brownlee.
April 4th, 1975. It's definitely a pivotal point in my life where I left part of myself behind in Vietnam.
When Operation Baby Lift resumed, Kelly, along with hundreds of other orphans, were flown to the United States. She was eventually adopted by a family near Seattle, Washington.
There was a 25-year anniversary in April of 2000, and it brought together all of the adults that were adopted from Vietnam. And I ended up meeting someone who's very special and actually ended up marrying.
Chris Brownlee and his wife Kelly were both airlifted out of Vietnam on April the 5th, 1975, one day after the crash.